Hello, brilliant learners! Today, we're diving into adverbs of intensity. But first, let's review what an adverb is. In the sentence, she sings beautifully, the adverb beautifully tells us how she sings. To find out if a word is an adverb, ask yourself, how does she sing? Now let's break down how to identify and form adverbs. Adverbs are like the extra details in a story. They give us more information about verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. They help us answer questions like how, when, where, or to what extent something happens. How does she sing? She sings beautifully. The adverb beautifully tells us how she sings. When will he arrive? He will arrive soon. The adverb soon tells us when he will arrive. Where did they search? They searched everywhere. The adverb everywhere tells us where they searched. To what extent? She is very talented. The adverb very tells us the extent of her talent. Many adverbs are created by adding ly to adjectives. Quick becomes quickly, happy becomes happily. But not all adverbs follow this pattern. Some, like well and fast, don't end in ly, but still do the job of an adverb. There are several types of adverbs. Adverbs of manner, smoothly, loudly, cheerfully. These adverbs show how an action goes down. In the sentence, she drives cautiously, the adverb cautiously explains how she handles driving. In this case, cautiously gives us the lowdown on her driving style, letting us know she's being careful and attentive. Using adverbs of manner helps you spice up your sentences and give a better idea of how things play out. Adverbs of frequency, like always, often, occasionally, rarely, never, show how often something happens. In the sentence, he occasionally grabs coffee with friends, the adverb occasionally tells us how frequently they meet up. Adverbs of time, tomorrow, soon, now, later, yesterday, eventually. These adverbs let us know when something goes down. In the sentence, they'll show up tomorrow, the adverb tomorrow tells us when they're expected to arrive. So tomorrow gives us a heads up on their timing. Adverbs of time help you set the schedule and get the timing right, whether you're talking about plans for later or things that happened yesterday. Adverbs of place, like outside, here, everywhere, nearby, upstairs, describe where something is happening. In the sentence, the kids played upstairs, the adverb upstairs tells us where their playtime took place. Adverbs of degree, very, quite, almost, extremely, barely. These adverbs show us how intense or strong an adjective or adverb is. In the sentence, the movie was quite interesting, the adverb quite gives us a sense of how interesting the movie was. So quite cranks up the level of interesting and tells us it was more than just interesting, but not off the charts. Adverbs of degree help you fine-tune the intensity of your descriptions, letting you dial things up or down as needed. Today, we're focusing specifically on adverbs of intensity. These adverbs are used to express the degree or extent of an adjective or adverb, adding emphasis to how much or how little something occurs. However, they can also modify verbs to convey the intensity or extent of an action. When using adverbs of intensity, it's important to know where they fit in a sentence. Generally, adverbs of intensity come before the adjective or adverb they modify. If they modify a verb, they can be placed before or after the verb, but we'll break that down later. When you want to show how strong or intense something is, you place the adverb of intensity before the adjective. Structure: adverb of intensity plus adjective. The game was incredibly addictive. Adverb of intensity, incredibly. Adjective, addictive. If you want to show how strong or weak an action is, place the intensity adverb in front of the other one. Structure: adverb of intensity plus adverb. He answered the questions fairly confidently. Adverb of intensity, fairly. Adverb of manner, confidently. When you're using adverbs, where you place them can depend on the type of verb you're using and the type of adverb, of course. I know it's chaos. I admit it, yeah. For modal verbs like can, should, might, the verb be, and auxiliary verbs like have, will, put the adverb right after the modal verb. Be or auxiliary verb. She can hardly keep up with the pace. The pizza is extremely cheesy. They have never been late. This rule applies not only to adverbs of intensity but also to other types. For regular verbs like run, eat, see, place the adverb before the main verb. She barely finished her meal. He completely forgot about the party. The team frequently meets for lunch. We'll discuss barely, hardly, and scarcely in detail later, so stay tuned. Back to the adverbs. Let's start with adverbs of high intensity. These express a strong degree of something, around 100% intensity. Extremely. The new tech gadget is extremely innovative. Adverb of intensity, extremely. Adjective, innovative. Highly. The online course is highly recommended for its comprehensive content. Adverb of intensity, highly. Adjective, recommended. Exceedingly. The new restaurant is exceedingly popular among locals. Adverb of intensity, exceedingly. Adjective, popular. Greatly. Her efforts were greatly appreciated. Adverb of intensity, greatly. Adjective, appreciated. Immensely. The vacation was immensely relaxing and refreshing. Adverb of intensity, immensely. Adjective, relaxing. Next, let's go over adverbs of moderate intensity, which give us about 50% to 70% of the full effect. Pretty. The task was pretty easy. Adverb of intensity, pretty. Adjective, easy. Quite. He is quite skilled at solving complex problems. Adverb of intensity, quite. Adjective, skilled. Rather. The instructions were rather confusing at first, but became clearer. Adverb of intensity, rather. Adjective, confusing. Fairly. The test was fairly challenging, but not impossible. Adverb of intensity, fairly. Adjective, challenging. Somewhat. The weather today is somewhat chilly compared to last week. Adverb of intensity, somewhat. Adjective, chilly. Relatively. The area is relatively quiet. especially compared to the city center. Adverb of intensity, relatively. Adjective, quiet. Finally, let's cover adverbs of low intensity, expressing around 30% and below. Slightly. When slightly modifies a verb, it usually comes after the verb. He adjusted the settings slightly to improve performance. Adverb of intensity, slightly. Verb, adjusted. When using slightly with the verb be, the adverb typically comes after the verb. I'm slightly tanned. Adverb of intensity, slightly. Verb, am. Moderately. The food was moderately spicy, not too hot. Adverb of intensity, moderately. Adjective, spicy. Barely. She was barely able to keep up with the conversation. Adverb of intensity, barely. Adjective, able. The phone barely charged overnight. So it's still low on battery. Adverb of intensity, barely. Verb, charged. Scarcely. She could scarcely believe the news when she heard it. Adverb of intensity, scarcely. Verb, believe. Hardly. She hardly noticed the change. Adverb of intensity, hardly. Verb, noticed. Hardly, scarcely, and barely all express that something occurred, but just by a very small amount, almost to the point of not happening at all. They highlight the minimal extent or degree to which something is true or possible. They are negative words, so you don't need to use them with not. Hardly. She can hardly keep her eyes open. She's very tired. I could scarcely hear him over the noise. It was very hard to hear him. He barely passed the test. Don't say he barely didn't pass the test or something similar. No. You can use them with words like any, anyone, or anything, as well as with adjectives and verbs. They usually go between words like can, could, have, be, and the main verb. She could hardly find any information on the topic. It was very difficult for her to find information. There was hardly anyone left at the party. Very few people remained. I could hardly see anything in the dense fog. The fog was so thick that I could see very little or almost nothing. Scarcely. He scarcely had any time to relax. He had very little time to relax. You can use hardly, scarcely, and barely to say that one event happens right after another. In this case, the word when is often used to show the immediate sequence. Here's how. Hardly. She had hardly finished her meal when the phone rang. The phone rang just after she finished eating. Scarcely. He scarcely arrived at the party when it started raining. It started raining almost immediately after he arrived. Barely. They had barely left the house when the power went out. The power went out right after they left. Listen, I'd love to stay here with you more, but I've barely managed to avoid the pile of dishes in my sink. If I don't get to them now, right now, they will start growing their own ecosystem. See you soon, if I can survive. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next